There was a time when the caliph sitting in Baghdad would look up at a passing cloud in the sky and tell it to rain wherever it wished, because the taxes would eventually find their way back to him. Today, the descendants of that same caliph stand at the borders of Europe, begging for visas and aid. We often hear that this collapse is the result of external conspiracies or American tricks. While those forces exist, blaming them entirely is a convenient way to avoid looking in the mirror. To understand the decline, we require a clinical diagnosis. We are going to perform a CT scan of our history to identify the specific internal diseases that hollowed the Ummah out from within. The evidence suggests the Ummah was not murdered. It committed a slow, unrecognized suicide. In the 8th and 9th centuries, Islam and science were synonymous. Baghdad's al-Hikmah was not just a library, it was a state-funded research hub, rivaling the scale of modern projects like CERN or Silicon Valley. Caliphs prioritized the acquisition of books over the financing of wars. The translation movement was so lucrative that a single month's salary for a translator could exceed $350,000 in today's terms. Early Muslims actively sought out Greek philosophy, correcting the mistakes of Aristotle and Plato rather than rejecting them as foreign or infidel. This progress was driven by a core belief that observing nature and decoding mechanical details was a direct act of worship. Scientists like Ibn al-Haytham believed that by studying the anatomy of the eye, they were witnessing the craftsmanship of their creator. Religious conviction and scientific advancement functioned as the same machine. This theological drive resulted in the birth of algebra, the invention of optics, and the foundation of modern chemistry. In the 11th and 12th centuries, facing the trauma of the Crusades and Mongol invasions, an ideological shift occurred. The proponents of tradition defeated the proponents of reason, and the door to ijtihad, independent thinking, was formally closed. By 1450, Johannes Gutenberg's printing press was waking up Europe, making knowledge cheap and accessible. But when that technology reached Istanbul, scholars issued a fatwa declaring the machine devilish and haram. They argued that printing the divine name with a machine was disrespectful, and that scribes would lose their livelihoods. For the next 3 centuries, Islamic intellectual growth was restricted to the handwritten speed of the palace, while Europe's knowledge became democratic and cheap. This hostility toward progress turned violent. In 1580, a cleric convinced the Sultan that a plague epidemic was divine punishment for peeking into the secrets of the stars. In response, Ottoman warships were ordered to bombard their own observatory until it was rubble. While Europe entered the Industrial Revolution, the Muslim world was paralyzed by debates over whether coffee was permissible. We created a technological gap that became impossible to bridge. Stagnation of thought led to stagnation of effort. We corrupted the concept of tawakkul, striving and then trusting God, into a philosophy of fatalism. We decided that since our destiny was written, there was no need to move our hands or feet. We adopted a delusion that faith alone, without hard work, guarantees victory. Yet the Prophet himself built military strategies and organized ranks at Badr before he ever raised his hands in prayer. Success was never achieved through miracles alone. This psychological paralysis was on full display during the Mongol invasion of Baghdad. With a massive army riding toward the city walls, the population gathered in mosques to curse the enemy rather than manning the defenses. When the caliph was asked why he hadn't spent his gold to defend the city, he called it God's will. Using faith as an excuse for incompetence and inaction is a toxic defense mechanism that guarantees civilizational collapse. Islam originally spread through Indonesia and India not by the sword, but by the impeccable honesty of Muslim traders. Today, many Muslim nations consistently rank among the most corrupt on global indexes. We traded the demanding sacrifices of early faith for comfortable physical customs. We use these rituals as a shield, assuming that prayer and fasting will forgive the fact that we have usurped the rights of others or built systems on bribery and deception. This moral rot moved from the bottom to the top. In the final days of Granada, Muslim rulers took bribes from the enemy to betray their own brothers. In Bengal, ministers sold their nation for a few coins. Integrity is a law of nature. A society that abandons honesty for hollow rituals has no internal defense against its own destruction. Next, we imported the concept of monasticism, separating life into religion versus the world. This shattered the unified worldview that had once integrated the laboratory with the mosque. This schism created a religious class that viewed science as a threat, and a technocratic class that viewed religion as an obstacle. Our knowledge was left without faith, and our world was left without morality. Beaten in every field, we developed a crippling inferiority complex. We assumed Western power came from their fashion rather than their science. In Turkey, the state mandated the Western suit and the hat, believing that physical imitation was the secret to modernization. This self-hatred led rulers to search for pride in dead, pre-Islamic empires. The Shah of Iran pinned medals on his chest and declared himself the successor of Cyrus, distancing himself from his own people's history. These leaders spent vast resources on empty pageantry to artificially link themselves to ancient kings. This trade of civilizational depth for shallow local heritage left the Ummah fractured into competing nationalisms. This elite obsession with Western fashion and local heritage created a polarized, confused public. Today, that fragmentation is so deep that Muslim nations often view one another as primary rivals, adopting an apologetic tone when speaking of their own identity. We complain that the world does not respect us, but respect is built on power. And that power is built on a specific foundation, the union of rigorous intellect and incorruptible character. The cure is not a regression to the 7th century. It is the revival of the mindset that once harmonized the laboratory and the mosque, the spirit that viewed the pursuit of truth as the highest policy. The question is not what America or Europe will do next. The question is what you and I will do. Civilizational decline is not a destiny. As long as the mandate of Iqra, to read and seek knowledge, remains, the choice to rise belongs entirely to us.